Good morning, people of the Great Southern Land. It's about 11:44 on the 9th of the 9th, 2020, being a 22 day. I just wanted to do a quick video. I've just been reading through some of the legislation regarding the COVID, and I did get some information from a good friend of mine, Matthew Hopkins, who is a Senate candidate for the Great Australian Party, and he put me in the direction of where to look. And I did want to do a video with Matt, but he's unavailable at the moment as he is overseas. But I'll get straight into it. Just wanted to do a quick one. Again, it's around the legislation and the rules, as they keep calling them, the rules on at the moment. So I think the first one I'll just briefly begin with, and this goes for the Emergency Management Act, the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. If we look at a definition of a police officer, it says has the same meaning as in the Victoria Police Act 2013. So what that means, if I can find that, here we go. Under the Victoria Police Act 2013, Section 51, Duties and Powers of Police Officers. A police officer who has taken and subscribed the oath or made and subscribed the affirmation under Section 50 has A. The duties and powers of a constable at common law, and any duties and powers imposed or conferred on a police officer by or under this or any other act, or by any subordinate instrument. Right, so what that's saying, that's right there, Section 51 of the Victoria Police Act, is that the Victoria Police, as in those acts, has the same definition as in the Victoria Police Act. The Victoria Police are bound by their common law oath and duties and responsibilities, and all other acts as well that are still in place. And the common law includes precedents, right not to give your name up, not to give your name and address up. That is coercion, and that is slavery by forcing people into contract when they are asking for your identification. And they're using force by coercion and duress to make people give up their identification or details when they have not committed a crime. So that's forced slavery, number one. It's also treachery to overthrow the Constitution and or the Commonwealth, which is imprisonment for life, is treachery. Use of force to overthrow the Constitution, which includes Section 92 of the Constitution, where they are restraining people's freedom of movement. I'm very well versed under Section 92 of the Constitution because I used it in magistrates' court hearings, and I have studied it quite to depth. Second thing about the Victoria Police Service, ABN number 634464814993. Sorry, that's the Police Department of Victoria. That is the statutory and the corporate side of the Victoria Police. And when they are acting under the corporate side, they are acting in their individual capacity, and they are liable as such. So I'll go into that further later, but that's acting as a public officer. Now that entity there is also a foreign entity because it is registered on the Dun & Bradstreet site, and it's registered to a company in the United States, which makes it a foreign entity, which by the very definition of treason is treason. And if I read the definition of treason, the offence of attempting by overt acts to overthrow the government of the state to which the offender owes allegiance, or of betraying the state into the hands of a foreign power. Yep, so that's Black's Law Dictionary 4th edition. So what they are doing by acting for a foreign entity, when they are acting as public officers enforcing private acts of parliament, they are committing treason because they are forcing the inhabitants of the land to, under duress, to submit to a foreign entity whilst they're forcing them into slavery. So that is treason. Because they're trying to transfer the wealth from the people to a foreign entity. Yep, and most of them don't realise that that's what they're doing, but they are doing that. When you mix treachery and treason and fraud and all these things, they're very serious offences, much more serious than the summary offences that they may bring to people should they so choose. Next. What else have we got? So the police are still bound by the common law, even under the acts, even under the COVID acts. Now I'm going to look at the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020, Section 52. Chapter 5A, Temporary Measures in Response to COVID-19 Pandemic. Now this is quite important because this section of the Act, if we look at Part 5, is repeal of the chapter. This chapter is repealed on the day that is 6 months after its commencement. That means that what they're saying in this Act is that those rights will extinguish after 6 months. So we'll no longer have these rights. Now, after that period, I'm not 100% sure, but it may then become a tacit law. All the laws or policies that they're enforcing may, after 6 months, become a law. And this is why it's so important, because this Act came into being on the 24th of April. It's so important that the people of this land get out and open up their businesses and trade and exercise their rights all over the place by the 24th of October. We must be up and running by the 24th of October, or we should be up and running, in my belief, by the 24th of October, regardless of what they say. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is when they fine people and they give people that offer or contract, which is a fine, they call it, or an infringement notice because they're infringing on your rights. This is the defense when you walk into a administrative court or a magistrate's court. And if I look at what a policy is first, I'm going to pick yours to you. So a policy is basically a policy is the administrative rules and principles and the goal of the passing body, whether it's private or public. So goal of the parliament or de facto parliament in this case. Now at common law, political decisions and priorities, this is under the definition of policy in the Oxford Australian Law Dictionary. At common law, political decisions and priorities are non-justiciable. Courts generally cannot adjudicate on policy matters. A common law duty of care in relation to the making of decisions involving policy matters therefore cannot exist. So if there's no duty of care, there's no obligation. Okay, so if they've got no duty of care and no liability for what's being done at the moment, then there's no obligation for the people to be a party to that contract. Remedy, if they can't get compensation if something happens to them, then they're not obliged to take part in that contract, because that would be slavery. Okay, so let's go through Part 5A, Chapter 5A of the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020, where it states 5A11, Purpose and Effect of Chapter. The purpose of this chapter is to temporarily change the operation of this Act in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This chapter applies despite anything to the contrary in any other chapter of this Act or any statutory rule or subordinate instrument made under this Act or any other Act other than. So that means that what's in this part here exists and it stands at law regardless of anything else. Okay? Now, so this chapter applies despite anything to the contrary in any other Act other than. Now, when it says other than, that means that these do apply. I, the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, Act 2006 Victoria, or the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act, or the Constitution Act 1975 Victoria, which would then necessarily imply that as the state constitution is subject to the federal constitution, that would also be in play, or any subordinate instrument other than a subordinate instrument made under the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, or the COVID-19 Omnibus Act, or the Constitution, or any other law. Any other law. That's under Part 5A11, subsection 2E, or any other law. That includes the common law. It is an ancient principle that under arrest has no obligation to stop for police nor answer their question. That is I believe it's a Supreme Court ruling. That also includes other precedences, the Constitution, law. Yep. So that's why when we read through the Acts and we look at the powers of the minister, it says they may do this and they may do that. And under Section 33 of the Acts Interpretation Act 1901, which binds the Crown, the word may, and it's also in the Interpretation of Legislation Act 1984, I believe it is, or 86, Victoria, that the word may implies that it is up to the discretion of the individual, but it must be within the law. It must be within their responsibilities and their duties. Yeah, but when the word may is used, it implies that they can do that, yeah, but it must be within the law, and if it's not within the law, then they are personally responsible. Okay? Read the acts properly, well, that's their problem, and if they're enforcing those acts that they can't read properly, that is their problem, that is their ignorance. Right. So again, 6 months after this, that's why the 24th of October, majority of people in this country should be out exercising their rights, because that is your disagreement. That is your showing that you do not consent to these rules and you will not accept these policies and offers that they are offering you, and the people have had enough and they just want to get on with their life, and we're not playing in this system anymore, and that's it. It's done. Because a policy is unenforceable at common law. Right. So Chapter 5A of the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act, that gives you, and the Charter of Human Rights we're going to go into now, that gives you your defence for when you are facing a magistrate's court or a tribunal. Not that. Chapter 5A, Temporary Measures in Response to COVID-19 Pandemic. Okay? Again, that's the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Measures Act 2020, Section 52. Right, then we go to the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, Victoria, Section 5. Human rights in this charter in addition to other rights and freedoms. And before we go into that, I'm just going to quickly read out the powers one moment. The principles of the Health and Wellbeing, Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008. This is another act that they're relying on. If we go to Section 111, yeah, and we look at principles, it says the following principles apply to the management and control of infectious disease. The principle is the overarching fundamental rules. It's the top, right? The principle. Yep. The following principles apply to the management and control of infectious disease. Section 111A. The spread of an infectious disease should be prevented or minimized with the minimum restriction on the rights of any person. Okay? And a person is also any body of people, any group of people. Yep. And if we go down to 111, subsection DII, and to have access to any appropriate available treatment. So when you have people passing rules and regulations about the use of alternative treatments and measures and experimenting with alternative treatments and measures, that goes completely against Section 111 or 111 subsection D2II of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008, to have access to any appropriate available treatment. Now, under the principles of interpretation, words in a statute are to be taken as superfluous. That means every single word in a statute is to be regarded as having significant importance. Yeah? None of them are there by accident. Okay. So back to the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006. Section 5, human rights in this charter in addition to other rights and freedoms. A right or freedom not included in this charter that arises or is recognised under any other law, including international law, the common law, the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and a law of the Commonwealth, must not be taken to be abrogated or limited only because the right or freedom is not included in this chapter or is only partly included. Oh, my battery's going to die for some reason. Just give me 1 second. Why isn't that working? Well, hopefully that will last a bit longer. All right, and if we go back to the Chapter 5A, where it talks about the rights in regards to the human rights, it is also a principle, statute law, that unless express, let me read it actually. Let me be correct here. Statute law supremacy. Statute law supremacy operates subject to the presumption that in the absence of clear statements to the contrary, legislation does not override fundamental common law rights. Okay? So now we have clear statements in the COVID Act, in the COVID-19 Omnibus Act, that say that this act, or nothing else, can conflict with the Charter of Human Rights, the Constitution Act 1975, which imports the Commonwealth Constitution or Federal Constitution, and any other law, including the common law. Okay, so they're telling people it does not override any of those laws. And when you look at the powers, again, I'll bring it back to the powers of the ministers. It is may. They may do it, but it must be within the law. Okay? Right. Only Section 6 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006. Only persons have human rights. Corporations do not have human rights. So when they ask you for your ID and you are giving them your state ID, that is why they are forcing you, they are coercing people to give their state ID, or they're locking them up. So it's forced slavery straight away. Yep. And if they tell you they're acting as a police officer, it's fraud because they're acting as a public officer, right? However, identification, that state identification, you are no longer acting as a person with human rights. You're telling them or agreeing with them that you are a corporation or part of their corporation. However, if you tell them, I feel threatened, because they've just told you they're going to lock you up. I feel threatened. I'm under duress without prejudice. Yep. I feel threatened. I'm under duress without prejudice. So everything you do from then on becomes null and void, because nothing that you have done under duress can be held against you in a court of law. Okay? And that's why it's also equally important to ask them, are you acting as a police officer? If you ask them nothing else, are you acting as a police officer? And they will tell you they are. Make sure you get an answer, right? And if they're not, if they say no, then say, why are you forcing me into a contract? That's slavery. If they say yes, you don't have to say anything else. Just make sure you're recording it, because from that moment on, they're acting in fraud. Yeah, because they're enforcing private acts of parliament. Okay? As a public officer. Yeah, as a private individual, not as a police officer. They are not acting as a police officer when they are acting outside of their common law obligations and duties. Yep. That's a fact. Okay? And facts override presumptions. Everything I'm telling you is fact. It is documented. It is in the law. It is written. So anything that they say, any of their assumptions are irrelevant. A fact overrides a presumption every time. Okay? Now, so we're back in the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006. Okay, Section 7, human rights, what are they and when they may be limited? Subsection 2, a human right may be subject under law only, not policy, under law only to such reasonable limits as can be demonstrably justified. That means they must provide the evidence that the reason those rights exist. So far, they are not providing the evidence as to why they exist. Okay? Simply, media articles are not evidence. News headlines are not evidence. The Chief Health Officer's opinion and the people giving information are not evidence until they have been tested and verified and scientifically verified by independent persons. Okay? So a human right may be subject under law only, again, not policy, under law only, to such reasonable limits as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society based on human dignity, equality and freedom, and taking into account all the relevant factors. Okay? And if we go to subsection C, any less restrictive to achieve the purpose that the limitation seeks to achieve, right? So they've gone full throttle and locked you in your house for the maximum amount of time. They've taken away every single the least restrictive means reasonably available. They have used the most restrictive means available, okay, within their power, or what they conceive to be within the law. And it may well be, because they are a corporation offering contracts and the people are accepting them. Corporate law, they may not be doing anything wrong. It still stands to reason that they must be proven to have done something wrong. They are not responsible for what the media portrays, and they are not responsible for what the public officers do in their private capacity. Okay? It is up to all those people to read these documents. Right, Section 7, Subsection 3 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006. Nothing in this charter gives a person, entity or public authority a right to limit, to a greater extent that is provided for in this charter, or destroy the human rights of any person. Nothing in this charter gives a person, entity or public authority a right to limit or destroy the human rights of any person. Right? And this is valid. And it even states so in the COVID-19 Omnibus Act. That's why I'm reading from this. Remember that. Write these things down. Download this video. Right, Section 8, recognition and equality before the law. Every person has the right to enjoy his or her human rights without discrimination. Subsection 3, every person is equal before the law and is entitled to equal protection of the law without discrimination and has the right to equal and effective protection against discrimination. What that means for the public officers and police officers, if a person, anyone comes up to you, it doesn't matter if it's a politician or a media, if you're one of your superiors, because as a constable, you cannot take orders from your superiors or government as to who you should prosecute. You know that. It's the definition of a constable, yep, in the Australian Law Dictionary. Australian Legal Dictionary. So if a person comes up to any police officer, now I suggest if people are out on the streets and they see a crime taking place, if they see a public officer or a police officer attacking another person for no reason or for not wearing a mask or for whatever, I suggest that person walk up to the other police officer and make a formal complaint about the police officer doing the action. So if you see two police officers or public officers and one of them is attacking another person, you walk up to the other one who has a duty and must act on what your complaint is. They must do that, or they are in breach of their oath of office, and they can then be held accountable. So if you see two of them, one of them and say, I'd like to make a complaint of assault, that man is assaulting that person, or that woman is assaulting that person. I want you to record this. I'm recording this. It has been reported to you. You must now follow through. Yep, give them something to do. Because a constable can arrest the chief commissioner. Yep, a constable cannot be told what to do by senior officers or government officials, right? It is their job to investigate what they are being told and then make a decision based on the investigation whether they are going to arrest a person or not. Okay? Right. Section 9 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, right to life. Every person has the right to life and has the right not to be arbitrarily deprived of life. Okay? Life in definition, let's look at the definition of life. What does life mean? It does not just mean breathing. Okay. Life. This is the definition according to the Oxford Australian Concise Dictionary, 6th edition. Including the capacity for growth, functional activity, and continual change preceding death, living things and their activity, human presence or activity, the period during which life lasts, or the period from birth to the present time, or from the present time to death. Right, another definition of life. A person's state of existence as a living individual. That means you can do what you choose as a living individual. Also, a living person. An individual's occupation, actions, or fortunes. The manner of one's existence, right? You have the right to life, which means you have the right to open up your business and trade and do what you need to do to survive for yourself and your family and even prosper. Okay? If you need to go out and exercise, if you need to do anything, you have that right because you have the right to life. Under the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act, under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Liberties, 1966, which is a non-derogable rights, even under a state of emergency. Okay? Also, right to life, the active part of existence. Yep. The business and pleasures of the world. Yep. That includes travel. Yeah. Business. Doing what you need to do. That is all a part of life. Yeah. Business, travel, exercise, living your daily life. Yeah. So that you can provide a home and shelter for your family. Right. That is a part of the definition of life, which is, again, Section 9 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006. Yep. You also have under Section 10, protection from torture and cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. A person must not be subjected to torture. That includes psychological torture by threats of arrest and duress and coercion when you are exercising your right not to forfeit your private information, such as your details, to a foreign corporation or a public officer. Yep, he's got no right to force that from you. Again, it's treachery. Okay, it's slavery. Right? It's torture. It's psychological torture because you don't know what to do. You're put in a situation of torture. Second, treated or punished in a cruel, inhumane or degrading way. Yeah, being punished, being given a fine for exercising your right. Okay? And subjected to medical or scientific experimentation or treatment with his or her full, free and informed consent. That's really important. At Section 10 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act, again, people must open up. This country must go back to normal before the 24th of October. This video must be shared. This must go viral because the 24th of October, which they are relying on, will remove that part where it says the Charter of Human Rights and any other law in the Constitution is valid and exists and it is non-derogable. Even under these acts, it's non-derogable, but that ends on the 24th of October. That section will be repealed. Okay? So we need the entire people to get back on their feet and start working. You don't even need to protest. You don't need to get out in large groups and go into the city and confrontation. All you need to do is just go and open your shops, go back to work, go and see your family, just live your life. You have the right to life. It is written, it is fact. It doesn't matter what they think. We will see them in court. Do not worry about that, all right? Next, freedom from forced work. A person must not be held in slavery or servitude. Again, when they are forcing you to give your state identification. Yep, they are forcing you into a contract that is slavery, period. End of discussion. Okay? A person must not be made to perform forced or compulsory labour. But when they are giving you fines, they are forcing you to perform labour or give up your money. Or they will be forcing you in the very near future into possibly into work camps and forcing you to go to work because you will have to pay the debts that this government is racking up while you are asleep. While you are getting paid to stay at home and do nothing and you think it's great and you are getting this money, they are racking up the debt, okay? And that will be then forced upon the people unless the people do what is necessary. Anyway, freedom of movement, Section 12 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. Every person lawfully within Victoria has the right to move freely within Victoria and to enter and leave it as the freedom to choose where to live. Okay, that means you cannot be subjected and suppressed and blocked into certain areas, nor into the state that they call it, Charter of Human Rights, which again comes or gets its authority at this time from the COVID-19 Omnibus Act. I'm just going to get the chickens out of the house because they're making a bit of noise. There you go. Yep, 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 yep. Yep. And by the way, by definition of an act of war in the legal dictionary, a blockade and blockading a civilian population is an act of war, okay? It is an act of war by legal definition. Let's even look at it right now. And simply also, in addition to that, entity on the ground or a and having people working for that entity whilst they're armed. They call themselves police officers, but they are public officers because they are working for that foreign entity. They are foreign public officers, and they are subject to the 1995 Criminal Code. But anyway, act of war. Formally, a hostile act through the use of force. Yeah, they're coercing you, yeah, to give your information through threat of arrest, and they will take away your liberty if you do not, your personal liberty and your freedom. So a hostile act for the use of force or the institution of a blockade directed against the citizens or territory of another state. Yep. Which that state can lawfully consider to be an equivalent of a declaration of war. This foreign entity, the police are now making the rules apparently, or some of the rules. They've got no legislative authority to make any laws that pertain to the people. They can make rules that pertain to their organisation only, to police officers and public officers only. Yep, they cannot make legislation and pass bills that affect the public at all, period. Finished. End of discussion. Yep. So, by the institution of the blockade against the citizens, they have, by definition, openly declared an act of war against the citizens of Melbourne, Victoria, and Australia, simply by locking down the declared war on the entirety of the Australian people. Yep. Right. Privacy and reputation. Yep. This pertains to people coming to your house. This pertains to them ordering you to give up your private details, such as your name and your address, yeah, to people that you don't even know. Yeah, for no reason. They're just coming and saying, give me your name and address. Yeah, I've got to get up. Yeah, or I'll bloody lock you up forever until you give it to me. Far out. All right. So, Section 13 of the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, privacy and reputation. A person has the right, A, not to have his or her privacy, family, home or correspondence unlawfully or arbitrarily interfered with. Right? Arbitrarily means that they're just deciding to force you to give your details or force into your house because someone else has told them to do it. That's arbitrarily. It means they haven't researched what they're doing. They've got no idea what following what someone else has done, and they've decided to do it because they've been told to do it. Even though the definition of a constable says that they cannot do it because any member of government or any senior officer has told them to do it, they must act on their own individual capacity, and that's what they're doing, and that's why they're all personally liable, unfortunately for them. Right? Furthermore, must not have his or her reputation unlawfully attacked. Okay? When they are arresting people in public, that is destroying that person's reputation, and that is an attack. Section 14, freedom of thought, conscience, religion and belief. Every person has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion and belief, including the freedom to have or adopt a religion or belief of his or her choice, and the freedom to demonstrate his or her religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, and teaching, either individually or as part of a community, in public or in private. Okay? Mum, go back to the start of the video, please. I'll answer your question now. Here is the COVID-19 Omnibus Emergency Management Act 2020. I'm looking at Chapter 5A, Part 5A11, right? This describes the purpose of this chapter is to temporarily change the operation of this act in response to COVID-19 pandemic. This chapter applies despite anything to the contrary in subsection C, any other acts other than, right, the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, the COVID-19 Omnibus, the any other law. Okay? What that's saying is that all the laws that exist, including the common law, still apply. Yep, it doesn't matter how the public officers are reading this. Yeah, this is what it's saying. It's written there. Yep, and the principles of statutory interpretation, nothing in a statute is to be taken. Okay, so what they're saying is all those laws apply, including the Charter of Human Rights, which I'm reading off right now. Okay, and under Section 14 of that Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, subsection 2, a person must not be coerced or restrained in a way that limits his or her freedom to have or adopt a religion or belief in worship, observance, practice, or teaching. Yep. So if your religious belief is that you are free and a free human being, and you believe that you have been given that right by your divine creator, then you've got every single right under Section 14, yeah, to demonstrate that in community, in public, or in private. Okay? Freedom of expression, Section 15. Every person has the right to hold an opinion without interference. Every person has the right to freedom of expression, which includes the freedom to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, whether within or outside Victoria, and whether orally or in writing or in print or by way of art or in another medium chosen by him or her. Special duties and responsibilities are attached to the right of freedom of expression, and the right may be subject to lawful restrictions, not policies, not rules, lawful restrictions, reasonably necessary. A, to respect the rights and reputation of other persons, fair enough. B, for the protection of national security, public order, public health, or public morality. Yep, no worries. Show us the proof, not just the media articles, not the headlines. Show us the proof that what you're doing is actually to preserve the national interest or preserve the public health. Show us the proof. We don't want headlines, we don't want hype, we don't want media hysteria. We want proof, and we want an open forum discussion of independent scientists and government scientists. Okay? Independent scientists chosen of the people, by the people, for the people. Right? 16. Peaceful assembly and freedom of association. Okay? Every person has the right of peaceful assembly. Every person has the right to freedom of association with others, including the right to form and join trade unions. That means that every single person in this country, has the right to step outside their door and congregate wherever they feel the need. Wherever. Now, bear in mind that this Charter of Human Rights and all the other laws, Omnibus Act, that we're going to be relying on in courts, or people are going to be relying on in the courts, is repealed 6 months from the day after its commencement. Its commencement was the 25th of April 2020. That means the 25th of October 2020. This section of the Omnibus Act, the Charter of Human Rights and all other laws repeals. That means that people must get out before fines they give you are non-enforceable. They are non-justiciable in any tribunal unless you consent to it and agree to it. Then it's non-justiciable, right? That means that people may have to take a bit of courage and accept. They may have to take these contracts under duress. Remember, I feel threatened, I'm under duress without prejudice. I feel threatened, I'm under duress without prejudice. Everything after then is inadmissible. Because you're under duress, it can't be used in a court. Right? Okay. Protection of families and children, 17. Families are the fundamental group unit of society and are entitled to be protected by society and the state. Protected by the society, that means look after your neighbours. Love your neighbours, stand up for each other. Right, subsection 2. Every child has the right without discrimination to such protection as in his or her best interest and is needed by reason of being a child. Okay. Section 18. Taking part in public life. Every person in Victoria has a right and is to have the opportunity without discrimination. Doesn't matter what your beliefs are around COVID, around masks. It doesn't matter what your beliefs are. It doesn't matter if you're a conspiracy theorist or conspiracy factist. It doesn't matter if you're a mainstream media swallow. It doesn't matter. Everyone has the right. Okay? Every person in Victoria has a right and is to have the opportunity without discrimination to participate in the conduct of public affairs. That includes gatherings directly through freely chosen representatives. And I'm going to talk about the gatherings and the use of force that the police or public officers are using to coerce the public to stay inside because they want you in fear, because they don't want you getting out before this 6 month period. They want this to be set in stone in law, and if you consent to it by not doing anything, it will be set in stone, period. Right, for members of their corporation, and that's majority of people in this country, or in that country, I should say, not in my country, in their country. Right. A person must not be deprived of his or her property other than in accordance with law, Section 20. Right, that means they can't come in and confiscate your phone, because of something some magistrate's written. That's not law, okay? That is a policy. They are corporate magistrates. They are corporations, That's enforcing slavery and theft, right? So they can't just come in and take your stuff, so record everything. Keep recording, right? Section 21, right to liberty and security of person. Every person has the right to liberty and security of person, A person must not be subjected to arbitrary arrest or detention. A person must not be deprived of his or her liberty except on grounds and in accordance with procedures established by law, not by policy. They're not by rules of the ministers. None of their rules are established by law. It must be established by law. It's got to be passed by the Parliament and approved by the sovereign people by way of being in line with the Constitution, right? Okay? Established by law and or precedents set by law and or common law. Right. A person who is arrested or detained must be informed at the time of arrest or detention of the reason for the arrest or detention and must be promptly informed about any proceedings to be brought against him or her. A person who is arrested or detained on a criminal charge must be promptly brought before a court and has the right to be brought to trial without unreasonable delay and must be released if paragraph A or B is not complied with. Yep, so if you're not promptly brought before a court, you must be released. Period. But that's a really big one. Right to liberty and security of person. That means you've got the right to go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Yeah, doesn't matter about their policies around curfews, around closures and whatever. Yep. You have the right and security of person. Anyone who brings this information before a lawful court cannot be found guilty because the facts outweigh the assumptions of the public officers. It outweighs the hysteria of the media. It outweighs everything. It outweighs the fear. Yep. The facts are the law. The facts are written, right? So even in their own private acts of parliament, they are telling you, even in their own laws or legislation, they are telling you that they cannot inflict, they cannot infringe on your rights, that you have them. They are here, they are available for remedy for when these public officers use excess of force. They act ultra vires, yeah, they act beyond their jurisdiction. They're not allowed to do it, but they're being told to do it, which goes against the very definition of a constable, which means they're acting as a public officer, right? Okay, they cannot be a servant. Let's go into the Police Regulation Act 1958. Section 11, every constable must have such powers and privileges and be liable to all such duties as any constable duly appointed now has or hereafter may have either by common law or by virtue of any act of parliament. Right, by common law. And if we look at Section 15 of the Police Regulation Act 1958 says no person can be a police officer who is the servant of another person, right? It means you can't be told what to do by any other person by definition, yep, of a police officer. If they tell you they're acting as a police officer and then they tell you that they're acting under the Chief Health Officer's directive, they are contradicting themselves and they are acting in fraud because they've just told you they're acting as a police officer and now they're telling you they're acting under the advice of somebody else, which they're not allowed to do by very definition of a constable. And if you look up the definition of a police officer, it is being a constable, right? And your office is independent in law and you are answerable only to the law, period. That's the facts at law. I don't care what your opinion is or what your belief is. That's the facts. Okay? I could go through the Chief Health Officer's with regard, Chief Health Officer may make examination and testing order relating to infectious disease. Everywhere it says it gives him an alleged power or a purported power, it says may. And it's up to the Chief Health Officer to make sure that what he is doing is within the law, or he is liable personally, yep, for what he's done. But then it filters down. Then it's up to the public officers and police officers to make sure what they're doing, because they're answerable only to the law. It's up to them to make sure what they're doing is lawful, right? Okay, what's next? Powers and duties of Minister. Emergency Management Act 1986, right? An emergency area, according to the Emergency Management Act 1986, an emergency area can only be declared for a maximum of 96 hours. That's a declared emergency area, and it must be signed, right? It's different to a state of disaster area or a state of emergency, right? They're two different things. But they're using the term state of emergency or state of disaster to enforce, what it appears, to enforce a declared emergency area, yeah, which can only be there for 96 hours. So anyway, what else have we got? Functions of Emergency Management Commissioner. Right, the functions of the Emergency Management Commissioner are to A, be responsible for the coordination of activities of agencies abilities in relation to the response to Class 1 emergencies or Class 2 emergencies, and control arrangements are in place during Class 1 emergency, right? So when it says there, right, and it does this in all the other acts that I've read pertaining to this emergency and whatever's going on, the functions and emergency management commissioner, or the powers and duties of the minister responsible, are relevant and pertain only to government agencies and employees of those government agencies. That means that it does not inflict on the rights of any individual person or human being in the territory which is deemed Victoria, right? All of their policies apply only to their agents, only to people who work for them. Yep, it's a statutory authority. It's a body corporate. Right? If you're not part of the corporation, if you're not working for them, you are not subject to their rules, because that would be slavery. Yep. But a lot of people seem to be or want to be part of their corporation, and, you know, maybe that's why they're doing what they're doing. Hence why you've got to get rid of, you've got to rescind your birth certificate. Yep. And make terms and conditions when you're using any other facilities, right? Anyway, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, right? These are non-derogable rights. These are non-derogable during a state of emergency, right? Article 4. Again, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. Is it 1966? Where am I at? Yes, 1966. Article 4. In time of public emergency which threatens life of the nation and the existence of which is officially proclaimed, which is what they're trying to protect, the official narrative. They're trying to protect the subjective construct, which is the state. It's the idea of the political parties of the state. They're trying to protect that, that corporation, that idea, right? In time of public emergency which threatens the life of the nation and the existence of which is officially proclaimed, the states parties to the present covenant may take measures derogating from their obligations under the present covenant to the extent strictly required by the exigencies of the situation, provided that such measures are not inconsistent with their other obligations under international law, involve discrimination solely on the ground of race, colour, sex, religion, language or social origin. 2. No derogation from Articles 6, 7, 8, paragraphs 1 and 2, 11, 15, 16 and 18. Article 6. Every human being has the inherent right to life, period. Remember life. Life includes the ability to work, to exercise, to get out and to live your life, to be alive, right? That is what life, the definition of life is. Right, so you have the inherent right to life and to exercise your life and to enrich your life by going to work if that's what it is and providing for your drive to the top of the country or the top of the land or the other side of the land or a couple of minutes down the road, whatever it is, right? It's all included in your inherent right to life. This right must be protected by law. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. Right? Article 7. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. In particular, no one shall be subjected to free consent to medical or scientific experimentation. That's Article 7 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. Under non-derogable rights during a state of emergency. Okay? No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment. Right? No psychological torture, no physical torture, no arbitrary arrest because people won't do what you tell them to do when they've done nothing wrong in the first place. Yeah, because that makes them the aggressor. They're coming up to you and saying, give us what we want, or we're going to assault you and we're going to deprive you of your liberty and we're going to falsely imprison you. Do what we say. Yep. And if you don't do what we say, just because we've said it, even though it's unlawful, you will be deprived of your liberty. You will be kidnapped. You will be locked up in a cage. Yep. Until you do what we say. Article 8. No one shall be held in slavery. Slavery and the slave trade in all their forms must be prohibited. Okay? So when they are under duress and threat of arrest to produce a state identification, being that contractual link between your human rights and being a part of their corporation when you hand over that ID, right? That's why they are forcing that and instilling fear in people to make sure people give them that document, yeah, that license, that document, that state ID, because that is their contract, right? Again, I feel threatened, I'm under duress without prejudice, yep, and then do whatever you've got to do to preserve your rights and to preserve your freedom, yep, including handing over whatever they demand of you in that state of slavery, because then they are forcing you into a contract because they're going to give you a fine. It's a monetary penalty, right? It's a corporate contract. They are forcing you into slavery straight away. Okay? No one shall be held in servitude. Article 9. Everyone has the right to liberty and security of the person. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest or detention. Yep, arbitrary means that the police are just doing it because someone else has told them that they can do it without even researching it or looking at the law themselves. They're just doing what they're told, right? That's arbitrarily. Yep, they've just decided they're going to do it, even though it's against the law. It's arbitrary. Anyone who is arrested must be informed at the time of arrest of the reasons for his arrest and shall be promptly informed of any charges against him. Anyone arrested or detained on a criminal charge must be brought promptly before a judge or other officer authorised by law to exercise judicial power and must be entitled to trial within a reasonable time or to release. It must not be the general rule that persons awaiting trial must be detained in custody, but release may be subject to guarantees to appear for trial at any other stage for judicial proceedings and should occasion arise for execution of the judgment. Right, it means you can't be held for an extended period of time for an accusation, right, without a fair hearing. Anyone who is deprived of his liberty by arrest or detention must be entitled to take proceedings before a court in order that that court may decide without delay on the lawfulness of his detention and order his release if the detention. Anyone who has been the victim of unlawful arrest or detention must have an enforceable right to compensation. Yep, and that includes them providing the avenues to make that remedy easy to seek, right? Article 11. No one shall be imprisoned merely on the ground of inability to fulfill a contractual obligation. Right, that means if you can't provide your document, your contract of state ID, right, Article 11. No one shall be imprisoned merely on the ground of inability to fulfill a contractual obligation. Includes fines. You can't be locked up for not paying fines, right? So if you don't pay your fine, well, you can't be locked up for it, right? Nor does that mean if you are a member of their state that you can be locked up for your inability to fulfill that state's requirements of you, right? Because it's just a contractual obligation, alleged contractual obligation, and the contract itself is questionable whether it's even valid, yeah? So yeah, Article 15. No one shall be held guilty of any criminal offence on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a criminal offence under national or international law at the time when it was committed. nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time when the criminal offence was committed. Yep. So there's no retroactive laws. Everyone shall have the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Article 18, everyone shall have the right, and all these are the non-derogable rights, even in a state of emergency or state of disaster. These are non-derogable rights. They can't be taken away. Yep, cannot. Doesn't matter what the state of emergency is. Article 18, everyone must have the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right must include freedom to have or adopt a religion or belief of his choice, and freedom, either individually or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in worship, observance, practice. Yeah, either alone or with community. You can practice your thoughts, your freedom of thought. You are able to put that into practice, right? And subsection 2 of Article 18, no one shall be subject to coercion which would impair his freedom to have or adopt a religion or belief of his choice. Right, so people are being subject to coercion by the police, who are being coerced by the media. Manipulated and coerced by the media is manipulating and coercing the people by the misinformation they are putting out to the public, creating fear. They are in breach of Article 18, right? And so are the police. No, or public officers, I should say. No one shall be subject to coercion which would impair his freedom to have or adopt that religion. Yep, that religion includes the right to be free. The right that your divine creator, whatever you call him or her, has given you just by you being born, these human rights, right? That is your belief that you are a free human being and that no one else has a right to tell you what to do, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. That's your religious belief, right? You've got a belief that you were created by something greater than the politicians. You don't believe the politicians created you. You don't believe the police created you. You believe that you were created by something else, a higher, another force, yeah? Because I can guarantee you that the politicians did not create you. Okay? Therefore, they do not own you. Yeah? Therefore, they do not control you. You are the power. You are the people. Yep? The people united will never, ever be defeated. Ever. But the people must be united. Doesn't matter what your job is. And if you're a police officer and you see another police officer acting as a public officer and breaking the law, arrest him. Set the precedent. Okay? Set the precedent, get your balls and set the precedent, because I know there's a lot of you out there who are brave and who are ready to do it. You see one of those police officers acting as a public officer and assaulting someone, you arrest him. Yep. And you let the rest of them know that they'll be arrested too. That's your job. Yeah, uphold the people's rights. You're not paid to serve the parliament. In fact, the very definition of a constable says that you are not allowed to serve government, and you are not allowed to serve your superiors, and you are not allowed to be told who you will prosecute by any member of government or minister or superior. Yep. Let's look at the definition of a constable. This is the LexisNexis Concise Australian Legal Dictionary. Constable. A constable cannot be directed by the government or senior police as to who he or she should prosecute. A constable's duty to enforce the law is a personal responsibility, and the constable is not his or her senior officers for the performance of that duty. That's R versus CMR of Police of the Metropolice, Ex parte Blackburn 1968, 2 QB 118, 1968, 1A11 ER 763. Right, that's the precedent set. Okay? So what they are doing, they are trying to defraud the public with the parliament and with the media, these public officers, if they're acting in that capacity and they're acting outside of their common law capacity and duty, they are acting under conspiracy to defraud the public. Yep. It is an offence under common law and under statute involving an agreement between two or more people to use dishonest means to inflict economic loss on another or imperil the economic interests of another, or to influence the exercise of a public duty. Right? They are also conspiracy to injure. A tort occurring where two or more people combine for the purpose of causing damage to another's business. Well, I would say that this de facto government has caused a lot of damage to a lot of people's businesses, right? That's a conspiracy to injure. Yep. And they're taking money off people. The public officers are taking money off people through their conspiracy to defraud, because they are upholding and enforcing non-enforceable policies, right? Okay. What else did I want to look at and read out today? There's so much stuff here, but I think we've covered a lot. I did have a couple of other things I wanted to read. I'll go through. Oh, I will look at one more. Delegation of powers. Yeah, this is really important that we understand the delegation of powers. All right? Maximate law, delegatus non potest delegare. That's Latin for a delegate cannot delegate, right? An example, or a de facto minister, an example, Daniel Andrews has given authority to the chief health minister, even if ScoMo's done it, right? Whoever's given authority to the chief health minister, yes, the powers that were given to the chief health minister cannot exceed or be greater than the powers that the minister who gave it to him in the first place had, right? That means if this minister doesn't, if ScoMo or Dan Andrews doesn't have the power to infringe on the people's rights as these public officers are, if they don't have the power, they can't give someone else that power. And they don't have the power because the people, you know, you the people don't have the power to infringe on other people's rights. And if you don't have the power to infringe on other people's rights, you can't give ScoMo and Dan Andrews the power to infringe on other people's rights, which means that they can't give that power to any other minister, anyone else, right? That means that no one has the right to infringe on other people's rights. It's really simple. Okay? Delegated legislation. Legislation made by a person or body other than Parliament, under authority granted to that person or body by an Act of Parliament. Individually, delegated legislation has a variety of names, including regulations, bylaws, rules, ordinances, orders in council, subordinate legislation, bylaws, rules. It means they're not law. Yeah, they are below law. How do we have this? So, right, you've got a statutory authority and you're supposed to have a de jure parliament, right? You're supposed to have a parliament who makes the laws, right? And then you've got a statutory authority who looks after the administration of the financial interests of that entity, being the Commonwealth of Australia. Let's say, for example, you've got the Commonwealth of Australia and the Parliament, right, who passes laws for the order, good governance of the people, yeah, or whatever they're doing, purporting to be doing. And then you've got a statutory body and a statutory authority, right, who comes out of the Parliament, who comes off the Commonwealth, who sits below them, right, in order to manage the financial affairs of the Parliament or the Commonwealth, right? The statutory authorities, yeah, they're just there to manage the financial affairs, yeah, and they make policies and rules to govern those people in those little organisations who are looking after the money, right? Who are looking after and doing all the commercial transactions, right? So all their policies apply to their employees only. They don't apply to the Parliament or the public, right? They don't apply to the Commonwealth of Australia, the public people. They apply to their statutory authority, to their little businesses, only, right? Because they're corporations. There's two types of Commonwealth corporations. You've got a corporate Commonwealth corporation, which is legally a separate entity from the Commonwealth, and then you've got a Commonwealth. You've got a de jure Commonwealth body, Commonwealth. I've lost my train of thought. Two types of Commonwealth entities. Yeah, you've got a corporate one and a non-corporate one. Yeah, the corporate one's supposed to do the bidding and to the financial interests of the non-corporate one. The non-corporate one passes laws of public laws, right? The corporate one passes policies in order to govern itself so it can maintain our finances or the finances of the Commonwealth in a better capacity, right? That's why you've got statutory authority and then you've got your de jure parliament, right? Two different things. Okay, but at the moment, we've got no parliament looking after the people. You've just got this statutory authority which was created from the parliament to manage its finances. Now you've got this statutory body, right, it's like put itself up here and it's making laws to try and take over the people. Does that make sense? Okay, so delegated legislation. The general rules of statutory interpretation apply to delegated legislation. Delegated legislation has the force of the relevant empowering statute, but it must be within the legislative power of the delegator, right? That means it's got to be within the power granted. It's got to be within that constitution because that's governing their corporation. Yeah, that's what the government and their corporation, right? It's got to be within the powers given to them in that, right? And it can't exceed the powers of the statute that it came from. Yep. So I can't give power to you and then you go and write up an act and say, oh, hey, Lucas, look, thanks for giving me that power, but now I've just taken over and now I'm in charge. Okay, well, that doesn't make sense because I'm the boss. How did you then take over my company when I've just employed you? I've just employed you to work for me, right? And now you've gone and written a letter and you're trying to take, and you're telling me you're above me and you own the company. No, I own the company. I've got the titles to the company, right? Does that make sense? All right. Delegated legislation has the force of the relevant empowering statute, but it must be within the legislative power of the delegator, and the delegation itself must not be so wide as to be uncertain or amount to an abdication of legislative power. Right? And that confirms it. So I thought I would share what I've been doing over the last, winter, I suppose. I've been busy writing up documents, and I've sent them off to the Governor-General, David Hurley. I've sent them off to the Private, International and Commercial Law section of the Australian Government. I've sent them off to the Department of Health, the Federal Minister for Health, Greg Hunt. I've sent them off to the, that's a personal one, New South Wales, Mick Fuller, the Police Commissioner of New South Wales. Reece Kershaw, the Australian Federal Police Commissioner, has also received. Shane Patton, the Victoria Police Commissioner, has also received. Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, has also received. The Chief of Defence Force, Angus Campbell, has also received. The Chief of Army, Rick Burr, has also received. Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, has also received. Chief Justice Michael Kirby of the High Court, the Principal Registrar, or the Chief Justice, of the High Court, has also received. Christian Porter, the Attorney General of Australia, has also received. And then there's some international bodies. All right, so some of the things that I have sent to these people include, but are not limited to, request for support and recognition as a sovereign international community to display International Red Cross Crescent Crystal in order to assist and observe in humanitarian matters of apparent genocide. All right, that's pertaining to the state that I've created here, and getting recognition in order to go into the zones as under the Red Cross and to observe and assist in humanitarian issues. Notice of asylum for people who wish to seek asylum out of those experimental zones, which are the city. Notice to public officers, foreign government bodies, foreign public enterprises and foreign public officials. That outlines to them what they are liable to under the 1995 Criminal Code for misconduct in the public office. So I'm giving them full disclosure and full notice. Notice to public officers, police officers and foreign public officials. Obligations during state of emergency under international law has also been forwarded to them as in accordance with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So what I'm doing is giving them full disclosure and notice of their obligations, right? Formalising that so they cannot deny that they have been informed of their obligations under these laws, right? Notice to constables, police officers and public officers, exercise of right to silence, duty to uphold common law, and exercise of right to personal liberty. Right, so I'm informing all of these, including the police commissioners. Now remember, notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. That means that to the police commissioners is counted as giving notice to everyone below them because they are responsible for them, which means they are now responsible to pass that down the chain of command as to what they can and cannot do. Right, the liability now falls not only on the individual public officer but also on the commissioners. Law and legal definitions as in accordance with Australian law and law dictionaries. That is a disclosure notice which notifies them of the facts of the matter. It explains to them and it shows them, it gives them the proof and evidence of how they are acting, all the definitions and precedents set, not exhaustive but the minimal, and it gives them full disclosure of what capacity they are acting under, right? So they cannot plead ignorance, nor can anyone under them in a chain of command from this point forward because they have been given disclosure full. Okay. I've also given a notice of foreign government in exile, armed belligerents. 1 second, I want to read this one out. This is part of the pile that's been sent to them. This is just part of what they sort of get, right? Alright, this one here is a notice of cease and desist. Notice of foreign government in exile, armed belligerents waging war upon the people of Australia. Alright, this one's been sent to the Chief of Defence and Chief of Army. Notice to proper persons of liability in respect of the Commonwealth of Australia. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Dear whoever it was served to. As in accordance with the Defence Force Act 1903, your prescribed role and duty obliges you to protect the Commonwealth and states comprised of the people. It is your duty to protect the Commonwealth from all foreign threats, including but not limited to covert invasion and attacks by stealth. Attached hereto is proof of armed foreign entities and agents thereof, public officers, who are acting under colour of uniform and under colour of office as police officers to extort money from the public in order to receive a pecuniary benefit for themselves or other persons, being a Commonwealth offence, in conjunction with agents of the mainstream media who are in fact and in accordance with law acting out and terrorist acts and are engaged in an armed conflict with the people of the Commonwealth and any other civilian inhabitants of the terror which is deemed Australia. You are to act as in accordance with your prescribed role and duty to arrest the mainstream media outlets from publishing any false information which may tend to cause fear in and coerce the public into surrender of rights. You are hereby required to arrest, remove and replace the despotic foreign government in exile, being the occupiers of the Commonwealth, in order to restore the peace, order and good governance of the Commonwealth to the people of the Commonwealth and inhabitants thereof this land. You are hereby required to arrest all public officers from acting against the people in a statutory authority capacity, to wit, arrest all purported police officers from acting out private acts of Parliament and or private bills and or private members' bills, summary offences, which are at law private, not public acts against the will of the people and without free and informed consent of contract, against express contrary intention, rendering such acts forced slavery. The slave trade in all its forms has been abolished. The International Convention to Suppress the Slave Trade and Slavery 1926 International outlaws slavery and the slave trade. The prohibition of slavery is a peremptory norm. Right, that is to say, you must arrest all police officers to the effect that they are acting as public officers attempting to enforce policies of a statutory authority, body corporate, to direct those public officers to cease and desist as in accordance with law, all unlawful acts being summary charges of a private nature. To instruct all police officers that they may and shall only act under and in accordance with their common law duties and oaths as prescribed by law. The aforementioned, when actioned, may restore and recover the peace, order and good governance of the Commonwealth without conflict, in accordance with law, by way of stopping this covert foreign government in exile from further waging war upon the Commonwealth and inhabitants of this land. Such acts shall correct the current state of wartime to peacetime without the unnecessary suffering of warlike conditions, whilst allowing police officers to retain employment and act in honour and as in accordance with law for the betterment of the community, economy and future evolution of this great southern land. Stop all foreign persons from entering Australia from any country during lockdown period. All fines, penalties and imprisonments founded on lies, deception, coercion and or fraud shall be null and void ab initio, and all injured parties of such acts shall have right to recourse as in accordance with law. Signed 3rd of September 2020. Delivered. And everything that I've gone through in that letter is explained in the disclosure notices and everything else that relevant persons. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Thanks for watching. Please share it. Please download this video. Again, Clip Converter New. Just copy the link, paste it into the Clip Converter New, download it, chop it up if you want to make it into smaller videos. Chop it up, upload it to whatever sites you like. This is really important information. Share it. Again, download it, edit it, and share it. And thanks for watching. Please share, please share, please share. God bless the great southern land and everyone who lives here. Blessed to be alive today. It really is an interesting time we're living in. And, you know, out of all the darkness, there always comes light. And a lot of people are coming together at this time. A lot of You know, I was having a discussion with someone before. It might be a good idea for people to get out in their automobiles. You know, it's the 9th today, 9th of the 9th, 2020. So at 9 p.m. On every day or 1 or 3 days out of the week, whatever. But everyone get together. They get in their automobile and they sound their horns wherever they are. They stop their car and they sound their horns. They might even just be in their driveway. Yeah. Just letting everyone know that, hey, we're awake. You don't have to break any laws. You don't have to break any rules. You don't have to worry about fines or anything. but getting out there and sounding that horn at 9 o'clock or whatever time is agreed, and moving from there. So it just awakens people to the fact that there are people around you who are awake, and you're listening and you can hear it. It doesn't matter where you are, and we're awake and we're communicating without breaking any of their rules. Yeah, if you're so inclined and in fear because of those rules, you can do this simply by your driveway. Yeah, so 9 o'clock every night. Yeah, the Great Awakening. Or there may be other time slots out there, I'm not sure. But anyway, I think it's a great idea for all people around the world. And anyway, thanks for watching. Please share. What did John say? John said the High Court needs one also. Yeah, I've sent one to the High Court. Thank you, John. Unless you're referring to the cease and desist, I can't remember if I did. I think I did send one to the High Court also. So thanks for watching. Rick Howard's asked if I could do one regarding the common law courts. Rick, if you want to do a video with me, mate, because to be honest, I haven't looked into the progression of the common law courts since they first begun. I'm aware that there are a lot of people coming together and doing great things, and it is progressing. But if I could get someone who is more aware of what's going on with the common law courts, I would really like to do a video and share that information with people. So, Rick, if you want to do a video together, mate, get in touch. Let me know. And same with anyone else. If anyone else has videos they wish to do together, send me a message and I'll endeavour to get on and do a video with you on whatever your field of expertise be, whether it be with what's going on, whether it be scientific data, whether it be how we're going to move forward in the future, whether it be natural health, whether it be law, whether it be EMF, radiation exposure, whatever your field of expertise is, if it pertains to what's going on with other people, please contact me and we will start arranging to do videos so that we can share this information. So again, thanks for watching. Many blessings to the beautiful people. You are amazing, you are strong, you are courageous, you are intelligent. All the information is there. Download this video, go back and watch it again, write down all the things I told you and look them up. You've only got to do a Google search to find the acts and go into them, and then you click on the section and you can read them. It's really simple, and that's what we need people doing. All right, so thanks for watching. Please share, please share, please share. Love you all. Have a great day.